Alright guys, what we're going to do today is we're going to clean up my exhaust pipe. You can see that it's a raw FMF pipe, and you can see it needs a bit of a cleanup. Looks a little cruddy all around here because I just haven't washed it properly. I haven't cleaned it properly and it's been quite a long time. So I'll pull it off now and we'll see how we go. You can see by this junction here that it's actually a lot easier if you take the muffler off. So yeah, I find it much easier if I take the muffler off first. So to get that off, you've got to get the side cover off first. Now we've got the muffler off, pull the exhaust bracket off, the hanger. Then pull the front bracket off. Then pull the springs off. I find it much easier to use one of these exhaust spring pullers here. Now the pipe should just come straight off. There we go. You can see it's not the nicest looking pipe right now. It's pretty disgusting actually. It's a couple of dents. I'm not too fussed about the dents because I'm just going to dent it again, but you can see it's pretty dirty. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clamp it in the vise. I find it easier to clamp it by the bracket that's down there. You can just sit it in there and tighten up the vise, and that'll hold it in place for the first chunk of grinding. You're going to need to move it around a couple of times because there's all different angles and everything, but yeah, that'll be perfect. You can see the pipe's held in place nice and solid. I've got it sitting on the end of the stinger there, so that way it sits nice and sturdy, and this way we can clean all the top of it and all in there without having to move it. We'll move it again later for more stuff, but what we have here, I've got all the tools that we need for cleaning it. It's got a bunch of different wire wheels here, different ones. You want some big ones and some small ones. These funny shaped ones here are good for getting the weird little curves in around there, and the bigger one, so like good for doing a nice radius like the back of the pipe there, and these line ones are great for just buffing up the outside. And I've also got my map torch there, which we'll be using for roasting the welds to give it that nice blued finish of a raw pipe. And I've got a scouring pad there because once you clean it with the wire wheel, you really want to hit with the scouring pad, otherwise it just looks like a pipe that's been hit with a wire wheel. What you really need is an impact driver as well, because putting in a drill's a bit too high speed. You don't really want to run a drill for that. Impact drive is good because the speed's a bit lower, so it's less likely to bite and less likely to burn the pipe. And you also want some safety gogs because you want to look after your eyes. I'm going to start with the splayed brush type wire wheel because I find that one works good for getting the bulk of it at the start, and being the splayed one instead of just the normal round ones like that, you can get in on a bunch of different angles. I find it easier to start with like a nice long run, like along that weld there, that's the longest part of the pipe. So you really want to start from the base here, like this. So you can see the first run of the polishing of the pipe, it already looks so much nicer. So I'll just do the same thing again, just next to it. You can already see it's starting to look a lot nicer, so I'll just continue that over the whole surface of the pipe. I always like to work through it segment by segment. You can see I've done this sort of segment behind the pipe here and it's starting to look really good. Now I'll start on the outside. You don't want to get too aggressive around the welds because the wire wheel, it is actually removing material from the pipe. So you don't want to hold it on the welds for ages because you will end up chewing through the welds. You don't want to do that. But you can see here, it's a little rusty and that sort of stuff. So I'll give this more of an attack. it looks a lot nicer. You can see I've worked my way down here. You don't really want to be working upside down, so I'll continue getting all the way around there once I flip the pipe over. Now that I've done that, I'm going to work my way through this front section here. So you can see I've done this front section now. So this bit around the back here, this is where it can get a little tricky because you're going to have to use one of the smaller wheels like this one here to get in around these radiuses. As I said before, be really careful because you don't want to hit on both sides at once, because if you hit on both sides, that's when it's going to bite and try to snap out of your hands. So I think I might actually spin this pipe around so I can get to it from the other side. So I've spun it around now. You can see how dented my pipe is, but I don't really care. And it's a little bit easier for me to get to from this side because I'm left-handed. So I'm going to polish up around the back of that quadrant there first, and then I'll make a start on there. Up around here is where it's quite filthy, so you can see I'm probably going to do, there's still a lot of rust there because I ride off road and I don't clean my pipe properly. It's still looking pretty filthy, so I'm going to have to spend a fair bit of time in there. Sometimes your pipe can get a bit of a bounce up when you're grinding it, so I like to shove a stick through there and just hold a bit of tension against the pipe. That sort of just helps it prevent bouncing when you're grinding it. So you want to just run across this in some overlaps. You don't want to have streaks. So if you can see a streak like the one you can see going down there, just run the Y wheel over that gap in the middle. It's starting to look a lot more uniform now, which is really good. I'm going to work my way around to this section here. Now for this header segment, I think I'm probably going to gently clamp the actual head and neck in the vise rather than by that mount, because it gets a little bit bouncy when you're trying to grind that, because it's supported all the way back there and around there. So I'll move that. You can see I've got it clamped in there. I have the aluminium inserts in the vise, so you're not going to wreck the outside, but also you don't want to go squeeze it too hard because you'll ovalize that and ruin your pipe. Even though this pipe's pretty trashed, I still don't want to ruin it. So now I'll start on this section. So what you really want to do is you really want to get past these little weird burnished, like rusted sections there. You want the whole pipe to sort of look like that sort of finish there. Once you've made a start on that section, it's probably going to be easy to flip the pipe over to get around the back of everything. Take a lot of care when you're doing around the brackets. You probably won't break the bracket, but these wire wheels can hook into the bracket and try and pull out of your hand, so just be careful with that. Bracket's looking a lot better, so now I'll do this section here. This section's not looking too bad, but this is underneath, so no one's going to see it anyway, but you might as well do it while you're at it. See, in this little radius here, you're going to want to use this little noodle. This one makes it a little bit easier to get in there and get around there. Smaller wire wheels like that, the outer speed is a lot slower, of course, because it's smaller diameter, so it's probably going to take a little while. You'll definitely need to reposition your pipe a couple of times because, yeah, to get around everywhere, it can be a little tricky. You'll end up finding you'll come in from different angles and that sort of stuff. So this one here, I'll probably come in from this angle and finish it off. It's a two-hand job, this one, so I'm just going to put it down. This one's going to be a bit easier to get in here with this little one, but you've got to remember when it's got a smaller surface area like this, it can get a little sketchy when you're trying to grind because it's only going to be grinding a small section at once, so you're more likely to scratch it deep. Okay, you can see I've moved the pipe once again, and this I should be able to get around the back of the header here and the remainder of the neck that goes over the cylinder. So just keep working your way around the pipe and trying to get into every little crevice you can. You're going to want to periodically wipe down with a clean rag because you can see it builds up a lot of dust all over it. You can sort of see where you've done it and where you haven't. So still got a little bit more work to do on this, but don't stress too much if you can't get into every little crevice, because usually the crevices you can't quite get into are the ones you don't even see on the bike anyway. But yeah, the more time you spend doing it, the better it's going to look. As long as you don't hold it in one spot and give it deep scratches, you'll be fine. Don't forget the actual stinger neck of the exhaust pipe too, because even though that's sort of hidden behind the frame, it's still worth it clean. So I'm actually thinking I'm going to hold this pipe by the stinger in the vise, but I don't want to squash that end. So I've worked out that the 19mm socket actually fits quite nicely in there. So I'll be able to put that in there and clamp the vise onto this section here, and it shouldn't crush the pipe. I think it fits nicely in there. So that's held nicely in there. The 19mm socket is going to prevent it from getting crushed. It's held nice and solid. You can see the pipe sitting against the bench, so it's sturdy. So now I'm going to make a start on the stinger pipe. I've flipped it over now, still clamped in the same spot just so I can do underneath. There you go, nice. So you can see the pipe's looking pretty damn good now, like considering how clapped out the pipe was in the first place, it's looking pretty good. But one of the main things you want with a raw pipe is everyone loves that when you get the nice bluing along all the welds and everything. And when you buff it back like this, the bluing tends to go away, and that bluing will come back naturally when you ride the bike, especially if you give it a good screen. Like 125s, you don't normally have a problem with the pipe not being blued up, but I ride off-road, so I don't really give this thing a massive rev. So what you can do, you can get your map torch like this, and you can roast it along the welds. You don't want to do it for too long because you don't want to weaken the welds, and you really should have a finer tip than what I've got. This tip's probably about a 1/2 inch tip, which is probably a bit big. You want a smaller tip, but if you just hold it like this, do a couple of passes like that and you'll get some nice bluing along the weld. You'll probably see a bit of smoke coming out the end of the exhaust because you're effectively heating up all the leftover oil in the pipe to its flash point, so don't stress too much about that. But yeah, I'm just going to spend a bit of time on these welds, just trying to get them a bit more blue. You can see where I've done it around here, it's starting to blue up a little around the welds. So I'm just going to give this one over the top a bit, another pass. Like I said, you don't want to go too far, you just want to blow up the welds a little bit, just to give it that naturally burnished look. Around the header, you don't need to worry too much because that's naturally going to blow up easily because that's the hottest point, but we'll give it a bash. Starting to get a nice little burnt tinge to it. That'll blow up a lot more once the bike actually gets ridden. And when you go to turn the pipe around, be careful because the pipe will be bloody hot. I know I shouldn't have to say that, but I know a lot of you dirt bike riders are pretty stupid, so I want you to be careful. See, I've turned the pipe around and I used a big pair of multi-grips to grab it by the header because I didn't want to burn myself. So now you can blow up these outer edges. You mostly want to concentrate on the edges that facing the outside because they're the ones you see. But yeah, if you want to get really fancy, you can concentrate on all the little edges and every little radius. But like I said, you don't want to do it for too long, maybe a couple of seconds in each spot, because you really don't want to end up melting through your weld. Nicely there. As the pipe heats up, you'll see it blues a hell of a lot easier because it doesn't take long to go from normal steel to that burnt point. Exhaust pipe, you're going to get cancer. What are you doing? While you're at it, you can burn out some of the leftover oil out of the pipe if you like. But there's no real need to, it just looks really cool. You want to go pretty cautious with the heat gun, the map torch, because it continues to blue for a little bit, so you want a nice sort of consistent thing, and yeah, you really don't want to go roasting the pipe. once you're at this stage, let it cool down, grab yourself a scouring pad, just give it a nice little scuff over. Just gets rid of some of the marks that you did earlier. Just gives it like that nice factory look. Once that's all done, give it a bit of a wipe down with a cloth just to get all the dust and crap off it, and then give it a good spray with a bit of WD-40 or RP7, whatever you got going around. Obviously this is all just going to burn off once you start the bike, but if you do this and give it a nice rub with a cloth, it makes it nice and shiny and not going to rust while it's on the bike. So get your cloth and give it a rub down, just gives it a nice shiny look. Look how pretty that looks. Also, while you're at it, clean your muffler up a little bit. A lot of the mufflers, like this muffler, has nickel-plated pipe there, so it doesn't really need buffing back or anything, but it's, yeah, the rest of your bike looks good. Make the muffler look nice too. That's a bit nicer. Looks much nicer. There we go. Now you can see how much better the finished product looks. And you compare that to the absolute garbage that my pipe was beforehand. Actually, it looks pretty damn good. Now it's time to fit it back up, and we'll see how it looks on the bike. Get it back in place. Yeah, I need to clean everything else, I know. But make sure your exhaust springs are already in place. Feed the pipe into where it needs to go. Locate it on the flange that's on the cylinder. This is sort of a two-hand job, but I find it much easier to hold the pipe in place and get one of the exhaust springs on, because that will hold it in place. I wonder if I can do it one-handed. No, I'm gonna need two hands. I'm gonna put the phone down. Once the springs are in place, you can put in your bottom bolt there and the bolt up there. And if you haven't got a carbon fiber exhaust hanger bracket, I don't know what's wrong with you. Get one, they're cool. I've decided to put this together with a nice new drilled out aluminium washer because it looks pretty. Don't forget to put your rubber gasket on the end of the expansion chamber. Then refit your nice clean muffler. Cool. Put your side cover on. Okay, side cover's on. Muffler looks good and pipe looks good. See, that's all it takes. About 11 hours of hard work and you got a nice, pretty, shiny exhaust pipe. Until the next time you ride it, then it'll look like crap. So after each ride, just give it a scrub with a scouring pad, then spray it with some RP7 or WD-40 so it comes up nice, but I'm happy with it. Cheers.